All right, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I sent you the agenda. So there are just a couple items we're going to discuss today and then prepare for the next meeting.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that. I had my door open. Okay, so I did receive the documents from Destiny. It has the purpose, the vision, the mission, and the tagline or the motto on there. So thanks for that information. And if we could just discuss it a little bit, just to make sure that this is something. Now, is there anybody else involved with this process besides for both of you? The planning process itself, or it's just the two of you?
Just us two.
Okay, cool. All right. So you guys have discussed it already and you're very happy with what the purpose and the mission is based on you doing additional research with organizations that you're emulating. Okay, cool. So the purpose, the vision, the mission, and the taglines. And you're just focusing on age group 11 through 17. Okay.
Yes. I guess my question would be, so if we do put these ages, are we only limited to working with these ages throughout our entire journey at Choices?
No, because you can always make amendments to your bylaws, right? So, and I would suggest you keep it wide open so you don't have to make amendments. You can just use youth. You don't necessarily have to put an age group to it. You can just use youth. So this way you have the flexibility of growing into something different. And, because the organization that's most adaptable are the ones that survive the longest. And they're the ones also that are, have an opportunity of getting funding based on programs, right? Because your idea is not to be a membership organization. So when you think about from a programming standpoint, who is going to fund my programming outside of the monies that we bring in, right? So you have to have that flexibility. So for example, the organization that I lead, we do our funding requests based on programs. So we have a Melanin Girls program that we service brown skin girls, and we choose them in middle school just because that's where you tend to lose them. They get a little bit crazy in middle school. So before they get turned out all the way, we try to catch them and let them realize that it's okay to be unique in your space, but you also have to celebrate your ancestors. So it's around an ancestral celebration group. So the 2 years that we have done it, we use 10 through 17-year-olds, and we just focused on Caribbean American. We found out that our community is not as large as for that age group like we thought. So this year, what we're doing is we're changing it to do a one-day conference, but it's still called the Melanin Girls program, right? So now you have to change how you look at it. And you want that flexibility in your organization. So don't keep it as a narrow focus. Think of it from a dream standpoint. What is it that you want to do? And that's what your bylaws reflect. So I would suggest you take a look at changing the age or changing the wording of that particular mission to say young people. Right? And is it just girls or is it young people, period? Right? Okay. All right, so this is where we're starting with. We're starting with your purpose, your vision, your mission, your taglines. So I indicated that we got that done. Great job. We're not going to deal with the strategic plan or the business plan right now. We have to get the application done first. So that's what we're going to focus on, is getting the application done. That's why I put non-applicable on for this particular meeting. We're not going to discuss that part at all. All right, so next, we're going to talk a little bit about the bylaws and the conflict of interest, because these are the ones that you have to send with your application itself. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let me find the bylaws. And I am going to share my screen. Bylaws. Okay. So can you see the bylaws?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if you noticed, we have to make sure that when we do the bylaws, everything on there is representative of choices. Why I keep saying changes? Jesus, choices. So if anything gets separated in the application itself, they can always come back to it. So what I did was I put, it's your corporate bylaws and your EIN number is at the top. And I'm going to send you guys this at the end of this meeting so you can run through it, see what it looks like, and see if you want any changes. So the bylaws have a standard way to look when it comes to getting a 501c3 status. So a lot of the things do not speak specifically to what choices is. It speaks specifically from a law standpoint, the items that you need to have in there, right? So you need to have the name, and that's specifically what it talks about. Your name is this, and you're also going to do business as choices. So you have, right, so you have choices, parentheses, you have changing how inner city children enter society, which I think is so cool, that it turns into choices. And then we address the items that they want. It's a nonprofit and it will be operated exclusively for educational and charitable purposes under that law. Now, some people do 501c4, 501c whatever. We're looking for 501c3, so we have to follow those rules. Okay, so here is where I plugged your stuff in. Choices was created in November 2022 to empower children aged 11 to 17 to become effective social navigators and gain confidence in civic engagement. I'm reading this because I want you to hear it to make sure that this is what you guys are going to do. Because sometimes when you write stuff and you deal with it all the time, you don't really hear what it is to see how others would see what you're saying. Make sense? So we talked about earlier about changing this age group or thinking about changing it to make sure it's more adaptable to what you ladies are trying to do. So you're going to be developing emotional intelligence skills and entrepreneurial agencies that they will be able to design their personal pathway to success, right? So that's what you said your mission is. Okay. And then these are the powers that by the 501c3 you have to have. You'll have the power directly or indirectly, alone or in conjunction or cooperation with others, which is working with that like-minded organization that you mentioned in your purpose and in your vision, that you're going to work with people that think like you to do these particular things, right? And then maybe necessary or convenient to affect the charitable purposes for which the corporation is organized, and or to aid other organization or purpose whose activities further accomplish, foster, attain such purposes. So you're going to work with organizations that are like yours to get your mission accomplished. You are a 501c3 nonprofit in the state of Michigan, because remember, we went through initially to register it in Michigan. And you can do businesses in any state, but you're just registered in Michigan, okay? And it tells you what some of the limitations are. And again, these are what the IRS asks for. So we're not going to run through those. What I'm going to do, like I said, is send it for you guys, for you to read through, to make sure you're okay with everything that's in there before we can say this is done, right? So some of the parts I want to highlight that we still need information on. When we talked about this initially, we said we were not going to be, interjected myself in there, I'm saying we, but you know what I mean. So you're not going to be a membership organization. Membership organization tend to stifle the growth of the organization itself, especially in the beginning, because you have to have members that pay dues, that come to meetings, that vote on things. So it's easier for you to figure this part out before you bring other people into it. Make sense? So there's no membership class. This is a director-led organization. That means you're going to have a board that makes the decisions, right? So there's no voting affiliations. Any dues will be determined by the board of directors. So for example, I am a part of a board that we don't necessarily pay dues, but we have a threshold of like $1,500 that we have to make sure we raise for the organization. So that would fall under this category, right? So here's a part that we need to start thinking about. You need to have directors for a director-led organization. So you must have at least 3, and that's by law. So you have to have somebody to lead, somebody that's a vice or a second, and then somebody that is the secretary or the treasurer, and they can be both. So you have to have at least 3. So that's what we're going to start with. And then you can add as many as you want based on the programming that you have. So for example, the organization that I lead, we have 3 directors. We have an executive director and 2 other board members. And then we also have program leads, which are by default our directors. So we have 5 programs that we run, and we have, like, I am the lead for the advocacy group, and I'm also by default the lead for the sports, arts, and culture group. And then we have one for professional development, we have one for educational development, and then one for community service. So that's how you think about it, you know, based on the programs that we're going to have, what kind of leadership do we need? But you know, you have to start with 3. So that's what I would focus on. Besides for DeAndre and Destiny, who's going to be that 3rd person, right? And typically the secretary is the treasurer. Just by default, it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you have to think about how long you want the terms to be. So you guys can define whatever that be. Your term can be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, right? And then typically what you do is you stagger the directors, so not everybody leaves at one time. So you have a brain drain, right? So if you have directors that are based on different term limits, one may start in January of 2023, and their term run till January of 2024. The other one may start January of 2023, but their term ends maybe June. So there's a 6 months gap between replacing that first one that resigned or left. So you still have legacy. Somebody has the information to pass on to them. Okay, so that's something to think about. And then you have the opportunity to define also, they can serve no more than X amount of consecutive terms, right? So for example, the governor, she can only serve 2 terms, 2 4-year terms. So, you know, after 8 years, she done, right? So that's, again, how you guys get to define what your organization looks like. And then you also set up based on when your start date is, and it's not a November start date because we're in the process of building now. So you can start your organization any day to say your kickoff date is. So for example, our organization, it took us 6 months to get it going. So we started the summer of 2017, but we didn't have our launch date till January 1st, 2018. Because you need that time to work on what your stuff's going to look like before you open up anything and say, yeah, we're ready to go, right? So you have that wiggle room to make your decisions. And this is not a rush. This is a process that you guys have to go through to make sure you're comfortable with what you're doing before you start opening your services to bring young people to work with, right? So this is your time to learn about what you're trying to do. Okay, and then you have come up with your qualifications of what your board of directors is going to look like and when you're going to place them. You don't have to place everybody all at once, right? You can place 3 now or 2 now and then say, okay, one of the things you need to consider though, you have to have a treasurer and a secretary as the first thing, because you have to have meetings to talk about what you're going to do. You put your plans in place. So you need somebody to document that. And you also have to start thinking about, if we, how am I going to come up with the $400, $450? If you and her put together your monies and said, you know, we're going to loan the organization this $400 to do this, you need to have somebody to track it. So for example, we have somebody that we have an IOU committee per se. So every dollar or whatever we put in, it's noted in there. So when we get to the point where we can start paying people back, we know why we owe them that money. So that's why you need a secretary and a treasurer. And again, they can be the same person, right? Okay, so we're gonna go through. So it tells you how you create the directors and also how you remove them. Why would you remove them? So there's, like I said, these are standard language. I have these in our bylaws, so you can consider using these. If not, just look at it and see what you want to tweak or you want to change, right? And then how often do you have meetings? You can have meeting once, like when we first started, we used to have meeting once a month. Actually, when we first started, we used to have meeting once a week because we had to figure out what we was doing. And then we started having meeting once a month. And then like in the second year, it just got to be too much because you have other things to work on, right? Not just this, you have these other things that you're doing. But as long as you're working on those programs, you can just have a report out meeting every 3 months. So now that's what we do. We have a report, we have these programs that we work on. So you have committee meetings or those kinds of things, planning meetings with other people. And then you have a quarterly directors meeting. So you go through and you say, these are the programs that we have and here what we are, you know, where we are with it. Because you have to have regular meetings. Should in case you're audited by IRS, you can say, yes, we have been functioning like an organization. Have the secretary pull up the notes for the meeting so they can see. Okay. So you define how regular you want to meet. And then there's opportunities to have special meetings too. For example, if you have an emergency that you need to have talk to the directors about right away and have it documented, you set a special meeting and you have to give them notice that you're having this meeting, and then you document the information. Okay, and then you have to have a quorum. Quorum is typically 2/3 of however many people that are involved in it. So for example, if you have 3 people and you want to have a meeting, you have to have a quorum. So at least 2 people have to attend the meeting, right? So it's not like you can just willy-nilly call a meeting and said, well, everybody needs to be there. You have to have a quorum once you get there also before you can conduct any business. So you can have a meeting, but you can't conduct any meetings, any business, or make any decisions without a quorum. For example, I sit on the City of Detroit Entertainment Commission, and we have 7 people. So we have to make sure we have 2/3 of that 7 before we make any motions to move any business forward. But if we don't have a quorum, we can still meet, but we just can't make any decisions, right? Okay. And the same with majority vote. Usually in a democracy, majority vote leads, right? Not in my democracy, but usually regularly in a democracy. So that again just tells you how decisions are made. And then compensation. You don't have to get any compensation for carrying out your business as directors. You can have, for example, it's called in-kind donation because your time is valuable. So it's an in-kind donation that you're given to the organization. Because if you're building out a program, there is time that the directors that are meeting that goes towards this program too, that can be documented as dollars spent. Make sense? Okay. And again, it tells you some of the other things. Compensation for professional services by the directors. I went to a conference on behalf of the City of Detroit Entertainment Commission before. I was not documented in my pocket, but they paid for everything for me to participate, travel, housing, those kinds of things. And those have to be documented also. And again, it also, not again, but that's why there's a conflict of interest policy as a part of the 501c3 application. So directors or committee members cannot rape and pillage the organization. They have to say that there's a conflict of interest. So you're not building an organization to put every money coming in your pocket. It's supposed to go to the organization. And if you're using funds, you understand that you need to have a separate agreement with the organization for providing these particular services outside of being a director. So we're going to touch a little bit on the conflict of interest policy also once we get finished with going through the bylaws. And again, I'm going to send you these documents for you guys to go through, read it, be comfortable with it. If you have any questions at any time, send me a text, give me a call. We can run through it so we can talk about it before the next meeting. Because I'm hoping that our next meeting will get the bylaws completed and signed, and then the conflict of interest policy completed and signed, because those are the biggest parts to get the application done. And I know you folks ain't got time to waste. We need to at least get the application into IRS so they can give us a decision, right? Okay. So there's different committees based on the programs that you're running, and you can define what the committees are based on the program that you're running. So we have 5 programs. We have an opportunity to have 5 committees. Sometimes you have more committees because one program may be running 2 different events. So you need 2 different committees to plan the 2 different events, right? And you can bring outsiders to work on your committees. It don't have to be directors, right? So this just kind of runs through what that touches on. And then the meetings and the actions of the committee. Again, one of the reasons I record meetings are some people are not objective when they take minutes. So you want what was said to be reflected in what the minutes are. So when, like, we had a meeting for the Melanin Girls yesterday, and we had somebody that took physical notes, but we also have minutes, the reported minutes that I make copies of and send to her for her to make sure she documented, cut everything that's in there. And just so from an audited standpoint too, you have minutes or meeting notes that are reflected of everybody that participated, right? So it don't look like it's just one person making all the decisions. And now it's easy to, like a lot of our minutes I save on, I save them on YouTube, but in a private unlisted setting. So I'll download the meetings from the minutes from Zoom, turn them into a video and put them on my YouTube account as unlisted. So like this, I can do that and send it to you guys so you'll understand what we talked about, you know, so you know what your next steps are, right? And then they talk about informal action that can be taken by the board. And this, again, you guys can differ. That's why a lot of this stuff is like wide open. So you have leverage to do whatever you want within the organization, as long as you stick to what your mission is, the purpose. Why did you, you know, what is it that you're creating this organization to do? As long as you stay within those bounds, you're flexible to do whatever you want with the organization. And then now we're going to talk about the board. Your board is your board of directors. The officers are, you define what they are. You can have a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Like I told you, all you need to start with right now is 3. So you define what it are. It can be a board president, it can be an executive director. You define what you want them to be called. It can be mom, it can be pop, right? You define what you want it to be called. And they'll serve at the pleasure of the board of directors. And then again, you define what their term are and how long you want them to be in office. And it gives a decision of what they are, what the president does, what the vice president does, what the secretary does, what the treasurer does. Take a look at these. Are you okay with what they're doing? If not, tweak them, change them to make them yours. If you want the treasurer to do more than what it's written in here, add some more. If you want them not to do all of this stuff, mark out some of this stuff. But this is typically what they do, right? And then you have opportunities for non-director offices. And those can be committee members. Those can be whatever you want them to be. But again, keep it in here. I wouldn't suggest you take it out. Keep it in here for growth. So you have an opportunity when you outgrow what your plans are for the next 5 years, you can change it still within the bylaws. You don't have to change the bylaws, but you can change how you operate because your bylaws allow you to. Make sense? Okay. All right. So one of the things you're going to have to do is get a bank account. You guys can get a bank account now because you have your EIN number, you have your state of Michigan registration, and that's really all you need to open a bank account, right? And that this addresses that. Except as otherwise provided, the treasurer / secretary can make, has authority to pay bills and those kinds of things. And that's what this addresses. Like we have a checking account up at First Independence Bank, and we did that deliberately because it's the only Black-owned bank here in the state of Michigan. So we have our bank account there. So, and you also defined who can sign checks, who can have the bank card, who does the reports, the monthly reports or quarterly reports for funds received versus funds used, those kinds of things, right? And this is what this addresses. Who can take out a loan on behalf of the organization, who is held liable for what? So advance for expenses. And again, you're going to grow into these things. So this is just something that you need to read to make yourself familiar with, right? You're not here yet, but this is something that we have to show to the IRS that you're going to get here, right? And then keeping records. There's nothing like keeping records. So we, for example, we do monthly bank reports, monthly financial reports. And so we keep the records of those. We keep the records of the bank statement that come in. So you have to reconcile your reports with your bank statement that comes in. We're fiduciary for a couple of nonprofit organizations. So we have to keep their reports separately, but it still has to tie into ours, right? Because it's coming in and out of our bank account. So you make sure you keep track of all of those reports. And we also do an annual financial report because you need that when you're going for funding also. So you just have to make sure you have clean record keeping. And I would suggest, and we can, I don't think, I'm going to prepare a folder on Google to send you guys the link with all these documents in there so we can work on them. You know, we don't have to be in a meeting to work on them, right? So you guys will have access to it. The conflict of interest, we're going to talk about that because that's a whole policy by itself. And then discrimination policy, this is saying that you do not discriminate, because it has to be in your bylaws. And it also talks about if you're going to amend the bylaws, how you go about doing it, which is typically you write an amendment to the bylaws and then you also send it to IRS so they know that something has changed, right? And it's typical to like, for example, you have companies have an HR policy. And if there's a change to the HR policy on the beginning of the policy page itself, it says amended XYZ date. So you know that it's a new version of whatever it is. Okay, and again, these other items are what you have to have in there because it's a federal document. Counterterrorism and due diligence policy saying that you're not going to do these things. You're going to follow all the rules and regulations, blah, 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 blah. Tells you how you keep your documents. You don't destroy them. It tells you how to keep the documents. So again, these are things that you just read to make sure you're familiar with. And if you're not going to do it, why you're not going to do it and how you're going to do it if you're not going to do it that way. And a 501c3 is a public organization. Anybody can ask to see any of your records at any time and you cannot stop them from doing it, right? So make sure you keep your under your skirt clean, make sure your toenails are clean, those kinds of things, because if anybody asks for the documents, your financial, your bylaws, those kinds of things, you have to be able to show it to them. Funders, IRS, folks that are thinking of becoming a part of your organization, one of the parents of the child that you guys are working with. This, you are a public entity, right? The same with your tax records, your employment records, any of your board committee files. So that's why I talk about make sure you're methodical record keeping. Sales documents, those kinds of things, right? Any contract that you sign with anybody to do any work, those are all open for scrutiny for people to see what you're doing. And this stuff sounds daunting, but it's really not that hard. If you know how to do business, it'll be okay, right? And now you know that email documents are just like regular documents, right? So anything that you send via email, it's open to the public. So if they ask for all your emails when you were talking about this particular thing, you print them, you send them to them, or you save them as a PDF and you send it to them, all right? Transparency and accountability. These are all that the federal government wants you to understand that it's a part of doing business as a nonprofit organization. So here they talk about you need to send the bylaws, conflict of interest policy, and financial statement for public inspection. And that's what you turn in with the application itself. Your bylaws, your conflict of interest policy, and your financial statements. You also need to get a website. You ain't got to get no big fancy website. You just need to buy a domain and under construction, right? Because you have to put your website in here, all right? Miss Destiny, you can do websites, can't you?
No, I can't, but we have worked on like a little Google site.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yes, so we have something.
Okay, cool. And this tells you what, what your website needs to be able to do, again, open to the public. And then you have to do your taxes annually. And for a 501c3 under $50,000, doing your taxes is so simple. You have to, set up an account with you on IRS and you file an easy 990. postcard just telling them that you have not made any revenues over $50,000. They acknowledge that they got it and you keep a copy of it. All your meetings are public. So somebody can hear that you have a meeting and come sit in because you're a public organization, right? Anybody that's donating, they have to be able to see your records. That's why typically when you, and Destiny, you should know this from Global Detroit too. Like if I give a donation to Global Detroit, it's considered a nonprofit location. They have to send me a letter of thank you or something that has their EIN number in there so I can file it with my personal taxes. All right. Code of ethics, they talk about that. So again, just make sure you read this. I think it's like 17 pages, so we're almost there. Confidentiality, if there's any amendments, you have to make sure it's at least 2/3. You have to, again, have a vote, 2/3, and you send them a copy of it. And then you need a secretary to sign. And again, we'll change these dates based as once we go through those kinds of things. So at a first shot, I know you're not going to have any questions, but you kind of see how, what's the word am I looking for? It's not complicated, but you kind of see how it takes time to do this, right? To start a 501c3. It's not, a lot of these folks pay these attorneys to do them, and the attorneys file the paperwork, and the organization has no idea what their bylaws look like. They have no idea when somebody asks them for something, they can't produce it because you guys were not a part of the process to know what it looks like and actually have the information for your own, right? So like I said, I'm going to send you guys the bylaws. You go through it, highlight anything you have any questions for, reach out to me, and then we can work to finalize that one. The next one is the conflict of interest policy. So I am going to share my screen again. Okay. So this one, it is for your organization again. And you just have to read it, telling you that you can be doing, saying that you're doing this, but you're not doing that. And if you are, all you need to have an agreement with the organization so everybody knows everything is above board. I'm going to give you an example for our community. I have a colleague that has a restaurant, that has a Caribbean restaurant, that has a Caribbean band. And he is the president of one of the Caribbean organizations. When he does events, you can never tell if it's, although he has the organization's name or logo on the event, you can never tell if it's for the organization or his personal business because the three of them are intertwined all the time. The only vendor he uses for the events for this organization is his restaurant or his band. To me, that does not look good. My question would be, if I'm a donor, can I see your conflict of interest statement, policy, or an agreement that you as a business owner has with the organization that you're leading to show me that you're not muddling the funds? So those are the things I want you guys to be aware of when you're doing business as a nonprofit. Keep your nose clean. I ain't going to jail for nobody because I'm too cute to go to jail. So my personal business, if I'm doing my personal business, because I have a consulting firm that I'm doing for our organization, I have an agreement in place. Or there is a in-kind conversation where you know that you knew, using my Sophia Choose services, to do marketing for the Caribbean Community Service Center. You see what I'm saying? So that's one of the reasons why quite a few years ago, the IRS wanted to make sure everybody had a conflict of interest statement or conflict of interest policy within their bylaws to show that you know that it's illegal for you to do personal business as a personal individual as the director of an organization, right? So that's what this is about. And it's just a matter of reading it because the language for this one can't really change at all to stay within the rules of IRS. So make sure you read it, you're familiar with it, know what the definitions are. And there is actually a conflict of interest statement that each director has to sign to send with the application. Okay, so this is the policy itself that we'll send, but you also have to have every director, everybody that's a part of the leaders of the organization, sign a statement, and that's sent along with the application. Okay. So that's this one, and I'll send you this one also. So let me see if, am I even following the agenda, child? Okay. Did you guys get a chance to register with pay.gov so you can get a username and password?
We have
Not
not.
yet.
Okay, so make sure you do that. So you have the portal, the username and password, the portal, so you guys can upload your information. Okay. And then I'm going to share this last document. Did I have it open already? Yeah. This last document, which is the budget. Okay, so this is the statement of revenue and expenses that has to be a part of the application when we fill it out. You guys have not operated with choices yet. So what they're looking at is from an expectation standpoint. How much money are you planning to use or to get in 2023? And these are all budgetary numbers, right? And you have to forecast it out for at least for 3 years for application process. So gifts and grants, membership fees, and in our case, we won't have membership fees, but we'll have folks like CCSC. We have Friends of CCSC, a program that we run that folks would give. It's $25 a year. So you anticipate that you're going to get $1,000 for 2023 to 2024 out of this particular funding source, which would be membership fees. Gross, and some of this stuff ain't going to apply to you. So the ones that apply to you and the ones, and again, it's a forecast now, this is a dream, but remember you only have $50,000 in your mind. So in your first year, you ain't gonna get to 50,000. Keep it about 10, 15, you know, for a total revenue, and you fill in the dollar amounts that you want in each area. It's very specific the way it's written up because that's how it's in the application, right? And I think I plugged the formula already in here where it adds and subtracts it. So you're guys gonna look at it for 2023 to 2024, 2024 to 25, 25 to 26. Again, so this you can start working on. I just want you guys to have this particular document in this format so y'all can discuss it, you know, and be practical with these numbers. Because I know you both have run programs or you're familiar with programs that you have run to know how much it takes to do each program. And if you're planning to do 4 programs for the year, multiply it by 4. Right? So this, I want you guys to start thinking about this from a program standpoint. How much funding you will need for the year to run your program, how much the value of services is for anything that you're gonna sell. So for example, you're planning to do a program where, in our case, we're building a cultural sensitivity toolkit. And we say, for example, we're gonna charge somebody $5,000 to run a cultural sensitivity program for them. So that would go under the value of services. So for 2023 to 2024, we're gonna do maybe 2 programs. So it'll be $10,000 on the value of services, right? And again, under how much money you're gonna spend, fundraising expenses. If you're doing a fundraiser, for example, an award show, how much are you gonna spend on the award show? That's for the awards themselves, the venue, the food, those kinds of things. So you have the revenues and then your expenses, and then how much money you're gonna end up with at the end of the year. All right. So that's how this goes. Okay. All right.
And we're completing that before our next meeting, right?
Yeah, if you can, or start thinking about it and fill in the numbers and we can talk about it. You know what I mean? Because this is something, it's not gonna happen overnight, and we have to use resources that we have to do this. So if you got a friend, for example, Destiny, talk to Gracie and you said, Gracie, you've done the what's that one that she does with the immigrant
Common bond.
Yeah, Common Bond. How much did it cost you to do one of your Common Bond programs? You know, and you tell her why, because Gracie will help you. You tell her why you're asking. You know, I'm filling out my budget for this and that, and I'm planning to run a program similar to yours. Can you show me how you came up with the numbers? Right? Or you take a look at the CCSC's website and you said, Sophia, I saw where you did this Black History event. Well, how did your numbers look behind that, right? How much did the venue cost? How much did the program itself cost? How much did your speakers cost? Those kinds of things. But I want you guys to think about it from a programming standpoint for 2023 to 2024. What are we trying to do? You know, are we going to do one program? And what is that program going to look like? You know, so you look at it from a financial standpoint and call a few of your friends, do some research online. You know, talk about stuff that you guys know already, you know, to see how you come up with those numbers. At least we can do it for 2023 to 2024. And then you said the next year we'll multiply it by 2, and the next year we'll multiply it by 3, just so we show growth, right? Okay. So that being said, have you guys discussed your staff structure? Who's going to be the executive director? Who's going to be the vice or the second? And then who's going to be your treasurer? And who's going to be the secretary? Have you guys come up with the names, spoke to others?
Yeah, Deandra, you can go ahead. So.
Sure. So I have a close friend from my undergrad. We're also line sisters, and she got her bachelor's in economics and African American studies, and I talked to her about being our secretary and treasurer, and she accepted. Okay. So that's who that'll be. Her name's Kiara Arnold, and I'll make sure that she's on our next meeting.
Okay, because the gosh, I think the application itself, I think we need to have their address. Hold on, look at the application. And did you guys start at least handwriting in the application yet? The 501c3 application, have you guys taken a look at filling out any of it yet? Even if it's just write it down.
I hadn't, but I think Deandra has.
Huh?
So I printed something out But I think it might have been instructions rather than
Oh, the
application
itself.
itself.
Okay, I'll send you the application also.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Because I think they asked for their names for the directors. They asked for their name and their address, if I'm not mistaken.
And talking about like the roles of directors, and maybe you can help us determine like a title for my brother. So pretty much he came up with the name.
Mhm.
And we want to be able to like give him credit and like in the fair future, like we see him having some sort of role in terms of running his own program for inside of Choices, but he's not really making too many decisions like in terms of like doing the footwork and the blueprint and the planning. So what would you suggest in terms of like us putting him on like the board of directors, and if there's a title that you would suggest as well?
So you can make him a program lead or program manager over he can be a program manager, so he's not a direct decision maker over the organization itself. He would be leading his particular program or areas of program. So go back to how we operate. And the reason I keep going back to it, because we were very deliberate about those kinds of things, right? There's some people that are leaders, and then there's some people that are not necessarily followers, but they're not strong decision makers. So we have in our org chart, I'm the executive director. I have two directors, Robert and Wayne. And then we have the 5 programs that we run. So the only decision makers are those 3, right? Myself, Robert, and Wayne. The other ones are program managers over particular areas. So for example, we have a program manager over the community advocacy. So everything that falls under community advocacy, that particular person is responsible for. Another one under sports, arts, and culture, another one under community service, another one educational development, and those so on and so forth. But they are not decision makers for the organization. They bring the information to the executive director and the other directors for consideration. And then we say, yeah, let's move along with it. If you can tell me how it's going to run, yeah, we can move along with it. Or we can say, no, let's try to do it a different way or something like that. So he can be a program manager.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, so we would need the name. Yeah, the name and address for that young lady you mentioned. I forgot her name already. I'm so sorry.
It's Kiera.
Okay, Kiera, yeah.
Kiera, okay.
The intern could probably get that. But...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I've been talking this entire time.
Oh no, it's been very I guess knowledge. I've been taking in a lot of information.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys have any particular questions at this point about the application? I know y'all ain't look at the application, you just looked at the instructions.
Yeah, I was searching for, I'm looking, and it was like the easy one or like the full version, and it was like, if it's this one, you need these instructions, and I was like, I need to print something. And I think it was the instructions.
So my email to when we get finished with the meeting is going to have the bylaws, the conflict of interest policy, the application itself in its rawest, because we're not filling out anything. I want you guys to start like just handwriting, or if you have access to PDF that allows you to, do the information there, so we can actually start with one and just revise it each time we meet, right? And then I'm going to send you the profit and loss Excel. Okay,
Okay.
and then we need do you have a domain name for the website yet?
No, we haven't purchased it yet.
Okay, and
Um,
then the webs, yeah,
if we was to publish our Google sites, I don't know if that would qualify.
I think we might be able to, but we just have to make sure that it'll let us like,
But we could think about that for free.
yeah, like so that it has our actual like choices domain and not like choices
Yeah.
dot Google something. You know what I mean?
right.
Like making sure that it's like
Mm-hmm.
just our
Okay.
domain. So we can look at it because I've never published a Google site before, so I don't know what it's like. But I know like, you know, like with Wix and stuff like that, if you pay an extra amount, then it's just your domain name and it doesn't include the platform. So,
But
but do you have any like platforms that you would suggest for buying the domain?
I don't know enough about that to be dangerous. That's why I have contacts. No,
Yeah.
I have the person that did ours, like ours is Caribbean Community SC.org. He did it with GoDaddy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
he
heard
did
about
it
that.
with GoDaddy. His name is, if you look at my website, you probably have a link to his name is Ryan Montague. And
Okay.
he created our website and he also maintains it for us. And he's pretty good. But I know a lot of you, my mother would say this, I know a lot of you young people know how to do that stuff already. So, you know, if it's something that you guys are familiar with, you know, take a chance at it. This way you don't have to pay nobody to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll definitely give it a look.
Yeah. So I would suggest you put a .org
Okay.
with your domain or .info or something like that. Stay away from the .com because it's probably going to be hard to find a domain with choices.com, right? But just for it to have the look and feel of a nonprofit, to be specific, you know, try to be as specific that you can about whether it's .org or .net or .info or something like that, because you don't want to blend in with everybody. You know what I mean? Okay. So how much time you guys are gonna need to start working on this stuff?
I have one question. I feel like I asked this before, but I could not remember what you told us in terms of getting a virtual address to be able to switch it from my personal address. When do we need to have that by?
You don't have to do it.
Okay.
You don't
So
have to
if,
do
but
that
if,
till you get ready to get a building.
all
Or
right,
have a
I guess
spot
what
for
I'm
it.
wondering is, but then that would mean my address would be public,
Yeah, you have
like
to be okay with
my
that.
regular personal.
You have to be
Yeah.
okay
So
with
yeah, that's something I'm not 100% sure that I'm comfortable with. But
right.
before we publish this, then I guess I'll have that information, or do I need to have it before that?
No, you don't need to have it before that. Here's why. The 501c3 that I lead, I am the registered agent, and it has my house address on there because I want to have access to the documents if there's anything mailed out. But we're housed at the International Institute. So on our website, and so you will see our the 1110 whatever 111 East Kirby address on there. But you can also do what's the name of them people? You can get a PO box, and you know that's a cost for you. Or you can get a UPS, has those virtual offices, you know, so those are other ways to do it. We just have a connection at the International Institute and we pay them a little bit per month to use their address. So we can say we're housed in the International Institute, but you can use your personal address. I would suggest that you use your personal address as the resident, at the agent for the organization. So you will have the documents, because we initially used something else and They was sending me letter. I ain't know we was getting a letter because the person was not checking the damn thing like they were supposed to.
Yeah,
And then I finally got a phone call from IRS because they mail stuff. They don't email, they mail stuff. So it's like, you haven't responded to blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, but I keep asking this person to check the doggone mail and they're saying that there's no mail. So I had her, when I was on the phone with her, I had her change the stuff to my address and I got everything that she mailed.
Gotcha.
makes sense.
Yeah.
But in terms of like getting this, I know you had asked that question before I asked my question. I
Mhm.
think we probably will meet this week. I'm not going on vacation, but I have friends coming in town. So like I'm gonna have like a pretty busy weekend. But within like the next 2 weeks, we'll definitely be able to meet and get some of this done.
Okay.
Get another meeting on the calendar.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you guys the documents. Reach out to me in about 2 weeks because I don't want to rush you guys, right? I know I'm a
Okay.
terrible mother. I ask my kids, they'll tell you, she just never leaves me alone. But I'm gonna reach out to me when you're ready. Be comfortable with 2 weeks because I want you guys to actually have your first documented meeting before you come back to me. So you, the three of you guys are gonna do a real meeting and you're gonna discuss this stuff and get your stuff in writing to show that you're actually meeting. So when we talk again, you're gonna have minutes from your meeting, right? You guys had an agenda and this is what we discussed, right? So you'll have a chance to run through the application. You have a chance to take a look at the bylaws and plan your meeting for about an hour. Then, so you go through like similar to I can send you because I don't think I'm going to send you a Word document for the bylaws. I mean, for the agenda that I used and just use that to hold your meetings. Hold your meeting. So you guys will have the same items that we discussed with you and you know which ones are priority to you based on what we discussed today. And you can address those 2 or 3 items in your first meeting. Okay. So now you're actually going to start running your organization. Right? Okay. Because like I said, we met for 6 weeks before we actually kicked it off, but we had documents saying that we were meeting as a nonprofit to discuss XYZ each time. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I owe you guys some papers. I'm going to get that together and send it over to you today. And then I look to hear from you guys officially in about 2 weeks. Now, I said, if you need me before the 2 weeks, please text me. You guys have my number. Text me, call me, email me, because I want you guys to be productive. All right?
We will. And thank you for your time.
Oh, no problem. You guys enjoy the rest of the day and look out for an email from me later.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one.
Take it
Thank
easy.
you so much.
Oh, no worries. Bye.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.